Okay, we are live on LinkedIn. Today I am joined by my good friend from London. Actually, she's originally from Italy, Silvia Del Corso, who is the founder of PinkSEO, which is an SEO marketing agency in London. Silvia, welcome. Why don't you give us an intro and who you are and what your background is?
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me here. Yes, I'm an SEO specialist. I've been doing this job for 10 years now, 6 years back in Italy. You can hear from my accent that I wasn't originally born here. And yeah, back in Italy, we used to run a marketing agency, a full round marketing agency. So launching and optimizing websites and apps and doing all things marketing. Then moving here 4 years ago, I decided let's just specialize in SEO, becoming an SEO agency, which is something that I really believed in specialization. And that was what I loved doing. So I went following my heart and following the strongest type of expertise that I could have. And it worked. It's worked well because when you become a point of reference for doing one thing in particular, it's easier to really specialize and become cutting edge in that type of technology, and also then with collaborations and other type of partnerships.
Definitely. And I love the fact that, like me, you decided to niche down and go with your strength. And I know that you're known as the SEO lady in London. But
Hmm.
in particular, I know SEO is very broad, but we want to focus specifically, if possible, on e-commerce. And I know, like I said, a lot of the concepts that we're going to talk about today will apply to any type of website. But what has changed in the last few years? Because SEO seems to be one of those channels where there's so much information on what is the best practice, what's wrong, black hat, white hat. What's changed in the last few years for SEO and e-commerce?
Well, having been in the industry for 10 years, I've been seeing the major changes, like the big beasts, the big changes in the algorithm updates, the ones with the animal name, the panda, the penguin, the hummingbird, the ones that really, really made people tremble. And after those ones, we haven't had any major changes. What's kept on going is refining, pointing on quality. So user experience and quality being the North Pole, driving the best practices with SEO. So what wasn't allowed to do and has started to becoming penalized since the big algorithm updates, like thin content or pages cloaking keywords, stuffing content,
Yeah,
horrible practices, or old type of link building. All these things were penalized, and even more would be penalized now. So we are going into high quality pages, content that really provides value, that gives a very good user experience. And Google now is able to track the Google experience. We know that they've been patenting and using always more the artificial intelligence and the machine learning
yeah,
within the algorithms, so they can track how we enjoy websites, if we visit pages, if we spend time on pages, if we bounce away. These are all criteria that definitely Google does track and learns from our interactions. The algorithm learns, this is a positive signal, let's rank the site better. This is a bad
yeah.
signal, it doesn't deserve to be ranking so well, that let's demote it. So quality wins even more.
Yeah, no, it's very in-depth subject, but just to touch on, you mentioned UX. How would you define like positive user experience? What are the key factors that might say to Google, for example, this is a good website and the user is enjoying it?
Well, there are ways that Google tracks, and they're mainly the experience on the page. So, for example,
Mhm.
how much time people spend on a page, the number of pages they're being checked, as positive signals versus, for example, the bounce rate, which is a very negative signal, because having a high bounce rate basically tells the algorithm this is probably being ranked by mistake so well. I shouldn't rank it so well because people are bouncing off. Let's demote it. Instead, if people spend quite a bit of time on pages, like for example, if you include a video, if you feature a video on a page, on a product page, and it's embedded on the page, and people have to stay on the page to watch the video, Google definitely tracks the time and say, well, this page is giving quite an actually good experience. It's worth. It's giving value. It's providing value.
I love that. I love that, because despite all the intricacies and techniques, it ultimately just comes down to providing a positive experience for the person who's on the site, which is what it really should be about.
Yeah. And making sure that the site is able to do the pitch on your behalf. Because basically with SEO, what happens is that we need to have content to be optimized. So we need to have words on the page. And there are various functions and various reasons why, for example, product descriptions, if now we are remaining within the e-commerce world, why, for example, product descriptions are so important to be well written, so to find some kind of good copywriting flair so that they can really sell, but also so that they can really display everything and they can make the pitch for you, because it's like having a shop assistant on your site who is explaining to a prospective buyer all of the features, and this is also helpful for this reason, and this is also features this and that. They are all words, they're written, and Google can pick it, and the potential user as well. So again, providing value, and Google also benefits.
Very sophisticated how it can detect things like that. Let's drill down a little bit deeper into the various e-commerce platforms. So I want to touch specifically in this part on Shopify, because I know that the market tends to have consolidated, in my opinion. A lot of companies now, if you want to set up an e-commerce business, you just launch with Shopify. And that's why it's gained traction so fast, is because of the ease of use to get up and live. However, is there various pros and cons? Because I've seen it circulating around the internet, and I don't know if it's true. Does Shopify have weaknesses when it comes to the infrastructure for SEO, or is that just a myth? And is there any particular platform that you feel really has a strong advantage in this area?
Let me tell you that it's not a myth. There are some kind of limitations within Shopify, and as an SEO, from a technical perspective, I can tell you that there are a few things that open some kind of open questions that you can't fix. But still, Shopify is growingly popular, and we had clients last year. They asked us to have a blog on Shopify. So much it was popular. So it is now something, and it is so easy to use, so fast, so customizable, and it can become so beautiful that really people appreciate it much. And I'm not telling that you can't get good results out of it, because we have clients and we have case studies of clients that have been achieving in very competitive niches, like CBD, for example, very, very good ranking on Shopify as well. You need to work well and you need to try and outbalance. For example, you need to know that even if you like it or not, you need to get on the block train. So you need to also start providing content. You need to intercept the user, the search intent from various different ways. But from an SEO perspective, yes, it's got limitations, but it's also got a lot of functionalities that work pretty well. So the page speed, the HTTPS, all the metadata can be optimized, the redirections when you need them, they're straight away. It's fast in loading. So if I need to say, are there more pros and cons, I can tell you there's a lot of pros. There's a little bit of cons, but there is a lot of pros. The best platform, well, WooCommerce, the extension, the WordPress extension for WordPress doesn't have so many limitations, but it's got a major limitation that it's not so easy to build. So if you're someone who really wants to have a Shopify website, which is done easily and kind of quickly, and you want it done without getting mad too much, it's easier to do it. It's more of an out-of-the-box solution, whereas WordPress is very granular and it needs some more.
That's interesting, because actually one of the limitations maybe of Shopify, like you said, doesn't have as advanced functionality, but at the same time, you've got those positive signals, like you pointed out, like the page speed and the ease of use, which will be positive signals. So it's all pros and cons, isn't it? Because if, for example, you get heavy on WooCommerce and WordPress, then you've got a lot of technical bloat and maintenance that you need to look at. And obviously that can negatively affect things like site speeds and usability.
You then need to do a lot of technical SEO on those as well. So you're not limited, but you need to work a lot. You can get it 100%, whilst the other can get maybe to a 90 or 85. But you got to work a lot to really get it perfect.
Yeah, let's talk actually a little bit about a few things that I've seen crop up in terms of good SEO hacks or techniques for e-commerce. The first one that I've seen pop up quite recently is people prioritizing Google reviews because they think it helps with SEO. Is this a myth or is it true?
Well, reviews are something that I always recommend, and it should be really a no-brainer with an e-commerce. So you definitely must, first of all, feature product reviews on your own site. So before thinking, and I know might seem obvious, but believe me, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's not obvious, and I've been working with websites, having e-commerce, online retails, and having reviews on the page is something that is really important, not just because you're proving the peer-to-peer validation, but also because it is customer-driven content, user-generated content. So people write about your product, they use keywords that you may not have used, they use their own language, and it's all much more content on the page. But also having them on Google from a second perspective helps, because you may have seen on Google My Business there is the possibility, and it's a free listing. So again, it should be something that every business owner should have. There is all the product section, so you can feature your products straight away with the price, the description, the image, and the link to buy on the site. So it becomes like a second showroom in which you have all of your products, and people can find them on Google straight away. So again, the reviews, having reviews on the Google listing, good reviews, a lot of reviews, helps the listing rank higher. And it doesn't only have a local type of visibility. It helps in general when someone is searching for the brand name, seeing the listing with a lot of positive reviews is quite an element of trust that you build.
You've just actually brought something else up that I wanted to ask you, and that is user-generated content. I know we didn't plan this before, but let's say, for example, you mentioned then the customers leaving reviews. I have like a bit of a strategy with, and I'm not sure if this helps SEO at all, but sometimes we ask customers to submit stories, whether it's their experiences with the products, blogs. Have you seen any useful ways to leverage that type of user-generated content and then use it to help boost the SEO as well?
Absolutely. If you can get somebody to express in their own words their experience, it is always more trustworthy. Either if it's a video, if it's an interview, it can be a podcast, it can just be a testimonial that they're giving, a review. They will use different words, different expressions than yours. So if you want, we got a little bit, we can go a little bit back, starting from some type of keyword research and understanding which words people express and
Yeah.
search for when they're searching for stuff. And that should always be a prerequisite before you publish anything. You should know with e-commerce as well what people search for. And sometimes it's surprising when we do this type of research because it unveils a little bit of intel within your user, your customer, that you may not be surprising. So in some cases, for example, we've noticed that people search a lot some features of your products. They are, for example, waterproof, or they are, for example, resistant in some cases or situations, and you may not think that people search for that, or specific size or specific elements. And if that's important for your user, again, you need to feature it on the page. You need to make sure that it's there, it's expressed, and it's there in the prominent positions, in all the places in where it can be. But if you let people write their own user-generated content, they will naturally express, particularly if you don't prompt them too much. If you just tell me what you found most useful, it may be something that may be surprising for you. You may say, wow, amazing, they find this feature as the most amazing, while I would have expected something else. For example, it all depends on what you're selling. But it's important because different people, different uses, different angles to see things.
Interesting. What about, for example, typing straight into Google? Let's say you bought a pair of Nike trainers, or Nike trainers waterproof, and then seeing what comes up automatically. Is that a good strategy to create content around what Google would suggest is like a frequently asked question? Does that make sense?
It can be a free way of getting keywords ideas. There are ways to get some keywords ideas. Google Autosuggest, which is what you just mentioned. So you start typing something and Google will suggest you how to compile, to finish what you were starting based on what people search the most. But also, if we want to stay within Google, then at the end of the page, you see people also search. And these are generally the questions. This is a type of more informative content that can help you. You can use it, for example, if you want to write an article which is featuring some elements of because you can't really put too much within the pages. And there are so many cross elements that you can feature several products together and make a bundle up article in which you explain, for example, the best tools for camping in winter if you've got an e-commerce or camping equipment. So you make an article in which you give your best tips for camping in winter. Doesn't have to be a sales pitch, obviously. You give real tips and real informative stuff based on people who know by experience what to do and what to use. And then you link internally to the products. So there is always some kind of call to action. Now this is what would help you most. And they generally, the inspiration for this, if you just want some free type of tool at the end of Google, you find this people also search that can be insightful.
Super. It just makes me realize how little I actually know about SEO. Speaking to you about this, I have a very rudimentary knowledge at best, so it's great. Let's talk a bit about YouTube, because this is something that I've fleetingly read over the years, is that whilst it may be more difficult to rank on Google for certain things, YouTube is still an opportunity. Excuse me. Do you have any experience with this or any background knowledge to share?
Well, YouTube belongs to Google, and it is the second most used search engine in the world. And there are people searching on Google and people searching on YouTube. Just they are two different categories of people. You may make them a demographic and maybe say that people searching on YouTube, they're slightly younger, but it's a different type of persona, and it all depends on what you're selling. But basically, again, YouTube is a free channel in which you can display a lot of things, and it is much more interactive. So,
Mhm.
for example, again, with e-commerce clients of ours, there is a client in particular that I'm thinking about, and they're selling accessories for wine lovers. So there are all those particular corkscrews and things like to avoid the sulfites in wine and so on. If you tell it, if you put the images, it is engaging. But if you have a video which shows how you pour it and how it works and how you use it, doesn't it convince you more if you're the prospective user? So you always have to put yourself in the shoes of the prospective user. And if the video is on YouTube, you may be found on YouTube as well. Always please from YouTube put a link to your site, because on your site is where the conversion happens. So it would be worthless to only have a strong YouTube presence and never monetize. So whenever you create something, always then drive, if possible, to where you can get money from them. But either you find them on YouTube or you embed the video on your e-commerce product. It's so much more complete. If it's a video in testimonial, an interview, if it's a video showing how to use it, it says more.
I'm a huge fan of using video on e-commerce sites, especially to show that the benefits the customer can get from the product. I think it, like you said, just makes it more engaging and guides them in the right direction.
More real, because we don't touch products. I know that we are used to buy online because now buying online is not a novelty anymore. It's normal. But still, every time we buy something online, we have this tiny worry. Is it really going to arrive? Is it really going to be what I'm buying? And the more proof and testimonial you see of a real video of the real product, of how it really looks in somebody's use, in somebody's experience, it gives more than just the photo and the copy.
Let's talk a little bit about. I know this is fairly generic question, but I can tell you a lot of the people that we work with have been so dependent for so long on using paid ads to send traffic to the websites that SEO has been very neglected in recent years. However, things are obviously changing. I don't know how familiar you are, but there's a new iOS update and Facebook ads are becoming more challenging as well. So people are starting to look at other ways to invest long-term in traffic. So let's say I've got an established brand, I've been heavily dependent on using ads to send traffic. What are 3 quick wins that I can implement to get my site up to speed and start driving organic traffic from SEO?
Well, one thing that I generally give as a basic recommendation is fundamentals first, because there is with SEO often this kind of shiny new syndrome, shiny new object syndrome. So artificial intelligence versus new things, and sometimes the very fundamentals can be forgotten. So thinking about the technical SEO and making sure that the site has been audited, has been checked, and there are no technical issues or errors, and when they're identified, they're fixed from the coding perspective. And then really making sure that you have a clear map of the site and all the main products, product pages, categories. They have an intentional targeting of keywords that you have not chosen randomly, but you've chosen because you have been checking that people really use them and your prospective customer uses those expressions. And then you make sure that those keywords are very clearly explained within the main elements of the pages. Making sure, for example, that you pay a lot of attention on optimizing your categories, because Products in themselves, they could change. They may go out of stock. They may get out of your range for some reason. But categories, they should be the main pillar around which you can get found, and that could drive your traffic. And also making sure that you keep your inventory in check. So if you have, for example, large inventories, like for example, wires of all the meters, 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meter wise, you don't need to have so many different products. Otherwise, you will have a lot of duplicated content, which Google does not like. So in this case, better to have product bundles with the different variations within. And in this case, it's easier for you to have strong content, and then people choose the variation that they like.
It's very interesting. I had no idea about that.
A final tip that I was mentioning the other day is when you are out of stock, when you're running out of stock, some of the things, and people just completely delete the page, you may consider it has taken some time for you to rank that page, that product page. If in the future, for example, you are restocking that item, then it may be worth keeping the page and keeping an information or a contact detail. Leave me your email and I will let you know when the product is restocked. Or if you know, for example, when you're going to have it again, you can tell them this product will come back in stock in May, for example.
Yeah.
And you're already giving them information. And in the meantime, try to sell them something else. So related products. This product is now not available, but you may like this ones, these other similar elements.
I can tell you as well that we set up like a back in stock flow for where the business is relevant, and those emails, as you'd expect, I suppose, tend to perform the best out of any flow that you can set up because people have been waiting for it, so it makes sense. Let's pillar content. So this is something I've seen crop up quite a lot, and probably sure you have as well. What is pillar content? What are the guidelines for creating it?
Well, pillar content has more to do with the blog section that your e-commerce could have. And if you want to think visually, a visual representation of the pillar content, you can think of the maple dance. So there are all the people bound with these nice ribbons around one central pillar, one central pole. The same could happen with articles. They are created like hubs of content, content hubs. They all kind of originate around a central entity, which is the cornerstone content, or basically the main element that you want to speak about. And then the other articles can be satellites, like possible uses of this, possible applications, pros and cons, best in class, when it may be better to use this in a different way. There are different type of applications, but if you think, for example, of all the why, for, when, if, you think of something and there is a lot of ramifications around that. So you start from the central, and the central pillar needs to be the strongest, because also in terms of keywords, it is the shorter tail. It is the keyword that's got the shorter elements. So it's the less refined. So it is the one with a bigger volume, more people searching for that, but even more competitive, because more people competing to try to rank for the same. And so it needs to be also longer, more explicative, more informative. The others have a longer tail in the keyword because it is main element for something. So you're already cutting some elements out of the competition and so the volume of search becomes smaller but more refined. So that's where you go laser focused into some very targeted persona and segmentation of the audience.
This makes me realize how little I know about SEO. Very, very basic knowledge. Great stuff. Yeah, very educational. Some of the biggest myths about SEO and e-commerce, anything that you see pop up that you want to tackle here?
Oh, well, there are some things there. sometimes just based on the fact that SEO in itself is an unregulated industry, and there are different ways of doing it, and they may not all work at the same time if you're not using the holistic approach. So if we want to consider a myth, the myth is just to pretend to have a side of a triangle and considering that the triangle will be able to stand. If we consider as SEO as a triangle, it's made of three main elements, which is the coding that needs to be flawless without main errors and issues, the content and the backlinks. And you can't rely on doing SEO only by optimizing the content. So if you think that SEO will work if only you put keywords, maybe spamming keywords, cramming
like
keywords,
people used to.
it's horrible, because then no one will trust the page. I wouldn't buy a pen from any site like that, because it is something that doesn't really provide any kind of professional approach.
Yeah.
It doesn't justify, same as it doesn't justify to buy backlinks when you get the typical daily email that happens to escape from the spam filter telling you, I will rank you on the first page of Google, buy my links, and the first thing you should do is run away, because
Yeah.
they are dangerous. This type of practices, they're not just old school, they can damage your site's rankings,
So
because
it goes back to, sorry to interrupt you. It goes back to what you were saying. The very first thing is that if you focus on providing a positive user experience rather than cheating the system, that's probably the best thing you can do.
That is precisely cheating the system, because basically backlinks, they are like an endorsement in Google's eyes. It's like a recommendation that you get. A third-party domain linking to yours is like getting a recommendation from somebody. The more you have, it's like a token of trust, and Google will see, oh, well, they must be good. They got a lot of endorsement. If it happens naturally, organically, because you've been creating a lot of a lot of good content, you've been working amazingly, influencers are talking about your products and they love it and they are linking, but it's not again a type of spammy link that you're paying for. It can be seen that it's within a context that's really about you, and it's not just a naked link. It comes from a domain that's authoritative, and it's not just linking out. There's a lot of practices that Google really can easily detect when they're done to try and manipulate. If you're only doing for that purpose, you may get in trouble. If instead it is a link that you earn because someone is enthusiastic of your products, it doesn't just help your SEO, it also helps you gain a bigger referral traffic. It helps you grow your audience, your popularity.
Is there any, just to touch on backlinks for a second, is there any, I know this is probably a really in-depth topic, but if you can give us a minute or two about a good backlink building strategy, is there anything that you recommend?
Well, it is a very long type of topic because backlink building is one of the things that that can more easily get you in trouble. So once you earn your links because of your quality, then it is the best type of links in absolute. So the more you invest in terms of time in gaining that link, if you only spend your time paying with your credit card someone to create you a link, that's a minimal effort. If you make a survey asking people which type of experience they prefer, and you prepare an article which is an in-depth piece of thought in which you elaborate something, so it's something that's really valuable, then all links that you gain to that, they are valuable because they're really earned by your strengths. So it all comes back to how much you invest, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of resources and time. It's got to do with your content marketing, with your content plan, because when you're doing some really good content, then you naturally get links. And also as part of collaboration. So you may be collaborating with others, and then it comes natural. For example, if you are someone within the nutraceutical industry and you've got a strong expertise about supplements, and you can really tell how some products work, and you give a piece of insight that comes from you, and that links to your site, that is something that helps you because it comes from your authority. So if you know, it is the EAT, the type of authority and trust that you gain.
I want to ask, this is quite selfish because this is something that I want to know the answer to. You mentioned about clean code being important for SEO. We're in the process of rebuilding our website. It's literally ready to go to code. And I don't know, have you heard of Webflow?
Oh, not particularly. What do you mean?
Well, it's a new platform basically for building websites, and it seems to be coming up frequently against WordPress. Anyway, it's known for having very clean code and being lightning fast. So I was curious. Obviously, it sounds like it'd be great for SEO.
There are some various type of platforms that are being launched now and used as an alternative to WordPress to try and fix some of the issues that you may have with WordPress that is relying strongly on plugins unless you really create your coding from scratch. Another that was recently mentioned is Craft, which is a spin-off from WordPress, and again is particularly used because it's clean, it's fast. You can start with any type of platform, but then you need to be able to really work on the assets and minify and cache and do what is needed. In some cases, you've got limitations. On some platforms, there are some things that you can't touch.
So just general housekeeping as well will help with keeping things tidy, making sure, again, the user experience is good. So the next 1 to 2 years, as I was mentioning to you before, I think things are changing with ads, third-party cookies. I can see a bit of a renaissance for SEO in e-commerce. So what's some good advice that can help people prepare for this?
Well, the biggest change, I think we've seen it this year, and it's been this acceleration into e-commerce, which is not surprising because everything has happened online with COVID and the pandemic. So most of retailers have pivoted to online retail. So this year we've really seen a boom of e-commerce, and it may be some type of good practice that we can see keeping going on for a little bit. So this year there's been a lot of new e-commerce being launched, and sometimes being launched a little bit in a hurry because they needed to be able to sell stuff straight away. Because, for example, this Christmas was going to be a different Christmas and gifts weren't going to be sold in shops. Most of the Christmas gifts were going to be sold online. So people just needed to be there, just needed to be online. So if there is one thing that we need to prepare, is that the competition is has grown and will possibly become more educated, because there have been many that have been just launching the site online, the e-commerce online, quickly and fast to have something, and now they have time, they can start improving this site. So maybe changing the platform or putting things in a better way, having a UX analysis, fixing some of the parts of the site that don't really convert so well. So if you need to be able to prepare, you need to be aware of which are your competitors. So you need to be clear who you are trying to outrank. Just by Googling what you sell, what you want to be found for, how you're ranking, how they are ranking, who they are, how are their pages, and let's see their strengths, their weaknesses, and where we position ourselves, and expect them to become better if possible. So you need to up your game.
Absolutely. So just starting with the fundamentals and getting the good user experience, clean codes, all the basics really in place, and
And
taking it more seriously.
the right keywords, knowing that you need to know the language that your prospective user uses. You need to put those words on the page. There is no hide and seek with Google. If you want to be found, you need to have those elements, those keywords on the page, and people need to find them, and Google needs to find it.
Helen says this is the time to really stand out above the competitors for a world-class service. I agree. That's why people come to me and you, Silvia, for world-class service. This has been like very, very educational. Honestly, learned a huge amount. I've worked with you before, and I can say hands on heart that you're fantastic, and you really know your stuff. But if for anyone watching, how can they contact you if they're interested in working with you or just find out more about what you're doing?
The website is PinkSEO.marketing. On LinkedIn, I'm Silvia Del Corso. I'm also there. We are also there with the brand on the other platforms, Instagram and Facebook. But LinkedIn is the one that we always check the most. So it's the way we get most of the connections and contacts and people just asking for questions, random questions.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, one last question, Silvia, before I let you go. Is there any tools that you recommend for SEO, for the keyword research? It just reminds me again, which one are you working primarily with?
Well, as a technical professional SEO tool, we've been working with SEMrush for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Since we were back in Italy, and it's a very in-depth type of platform. It can help you with all the content assets, the technical SEO. There is a lot, and once you learn how to use it, it's really a gold mine. But it's got its price, and it can be difficult to use if you're not technical. So you may buy a Ferrari and you're not really able to use it, and you're paying a lot for something that you're not really able to use it. In terms of normal keyword research, if you just start checking on Google and what Google can give you, and then there is a lot of free tools that you can find online. One that I'm particularly fond of is called wait. It is Answer the Public. And Answer the Public.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Have you tried it?
I've used it. It's great too.
That kind of visual interface. It only allows you 3 free searches per day, but it doesn't give you any numbers. So if you want numbers, there is, for example, Neil Patel, it does the Autosuggest, and there are some numbers on that as well. But from a qualitative point of view, Answer the Public gives you all the possible applications and a lot of ideas of things that you could write about. And if you write about them and you optimize them well, people can find you instead of the competitors, which is what SEO is all about.
Perfect. I'm going to leave a link for anyone who's watching later on Answer the Public in the comments. Last question. What do you miss most about Italy and hate most about the UK?
I don't hate anything, and you can believe me, I should have come here very early. I mean, I love my country, I'm fond of Italy, but it's very difficult to run your own business there. We've been struggling, it's been really challenging, and if we did this choice much sooner, it would have been better for all of us. I'm really fond of this place here. I've been treated really welcoming, and I started with no clients, no friends, no connections at all. You met me one of the very first times, so I really wiped my slate clean and I restarted networking, getting my connections. It's been a very welcoming place, and I'm totally fond of.
That's amazing. But I can say you do miss 2 things: the food and the weather.
I cook my own food, so I still eat Italian every day. So I can tell you. And the weather, yeah, but if you're locked down, if you're locked in, if you have to work all day long, it's better if it's raining. I mean, in the end.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. That's why your businesses went so well, because you left the sun in Italy and you've moved to the UK where there's nothing to do except work all day because you can't go outside.
I can stay in front of a screen all day long because otherwise it's grey and raining.
I know. No, I'll tell you what, it's even worse since I moved back. It is a beautiful day today. I'm just looking outside, but London doesn't have great weather, but it's definitely the best in the UK, especially compared to Liverpool. If you go up north, it gets grayer and wetter every mile that you travel.
I want to go anyway. I've never come out of London, you can believe me. Nearly
You
5
need
years
to-
living here, and I only venture down to Brighton as I learned to drive on the left side of the street.
Yeah,
Very proud, which I'm very
Yeah.
proud of.
You need to, honestly. It's I always say really the UK, London is not like the UK at all. In fact, I don't think it's definitely not a really British feeling. It's more of a cosmopolitan, big city. It is a big international city, but the further up north you go, I think more and more you see a completely different type of culture. And it's interesting. And yeah, a lot of people that you meet in London just haven't been anywhere outside of London besides Brighton. A day trip to Brighton.
And I don't feel too strange, even with my strong accent, because it's so cosmopolitan. There are people with any type of accent and people who come from anywhere. So I feel okay. I'm one of them.
Silvia, there's nothing. Listen to my accent. I'm English, and even I can't speak English, so there's nothing to worry about. Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. I will tag you in this, and yeah, guys, if anyone wants to work with Silvia, testimonial from me. She's fantastic to work with. Really knows the stuff, as you can see. We're going to end this here, and yeah, I will speak to you soon, Silvia. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Take care.